Today, I'm going to be going through my top 10 cozy games on the Nintendo Switch of all time. And I've got to say, this is one of the most difficult videos I have ever made. Now, as you guys probably know, there have been a lot of incredible cozy games that have come out on the Nintendo Switch, especially over the last couple of years. So in order to narrow it down to just 10 games, there are a few things I'm looking for. First of all, is the game unique enough? Now, whilst we have had a lot of cozy games, we've also had a lot of the same sort of cozy games. So in order to make the top 10, it needs to stand alone amongst the rest. Another thing I'm looking for is impact. This can either be a comforting feeling, a game you gravitate towards whenever you're stressed or whenever you just need to relax for a moment, or it could be a game that's story or meaning has stuck with you long past the moment where you actually finished it. That being said, this list is actually going to discount Animal Crossing New Horizons and Stardew Valley, and that's not to say these games aren't fantastic. They most definitely belong in this top 10 list, but I think everyone knows about them, most people have played them, and they're probably the game that got you into cozy gaming to begin with, so just to keep it interesting, we're discounting them. And just to be a little bit cheeky, I'm going to do some honourable mentions before we get into the top 10. First up, we have Sky Children of the Light. If you don't know, Sky Children of the Light is a free-to-play game that sees you just soar through the air to try and find spirits, each with their own story to tell you when you find them. And the cool part about it is this is actually a cozy MMO. Everyone you fly through the sky with is a fellow player, each in search of spirits as well. And one thing I love is the ability to call for a guide, which will basically allow other players to come and show you where some of the hidden spirits are, because some of them are really difficult to find. The thing that made me fall in love with this game is the scenery and the vibes though. It is truly such a beautiful game. But what keeps me coming back for more is the fact that this is constantly being updated, with brand new events for you to come back and play. Next up on our honourable mentions is Storyteller, which is truly such a unique puzzle game. Each page of the book is a brand new puzzle, and the idea is you've got to fill each of the storyboards with backdrops and characters to try and do what the title of the page says. But the puzzle doesn't just end when you've solved it, because some of the pages will then have an additional line to one of the titles that makes you solve it again in a completely different way. Another honourable mention is going to No Man's Sky. Now, although this isn't a traditional cozy game, it's definitely a game that can be made cozy, and I wish more people knew this. Because once you go into the settings and you turn off the ability to be hurt and turn off the need to farm for resources to survive, this purely becomes a space exploration game that is a ton of fun. Because not only can you go to different universes, land on planets, some of which filled with both plant life and animal life, but you can also set up a home, build it and decorate it yourself, and even farm as well. Our final honourable mention is going to A Little to the Left. This has to be one of the most satisfying puzzle games I have ever played. If you don't know, A Little to the Left sees you solve puzzles by basically just reorganizing household junk. And the best part about it is there's a cat in the game that will sometimes come to cause a little bit of mischief. The game itself is split up into different levels, some of which with multiple solutions, with the addition of seasonal levels as well that are added to keep you coming back for more. This was incredibly close to making it to the top 10. It was just missing that extra little something to make it truly special, but I can definitely recommend playing it if you haven't already. That's it for the honourable mentions. It's time for my top 10 cozy games of all time. We're going to start off today's list with a cozy game that I think is an awful lot of people's favourites, and that is Spiritfarer. Although this isn't a recent game by any means, this is highly regarded as being one of the best cozy games of all time. And that's not because of the stunning visuals, beautiful music, or even the comforting management mechanics. It's because of the truly beautiful way in which this story navigates the topic of saying goodbye to the ones you love. In this, you play as Stella, who becomes a ferry master to the spirits. And as Spiritfarer, it's your job to find the spirits and help them with their unfinished business, so they can finally move on to the other side. To do this, you'll explore the world in a boat you've made yourself. And as you go, you'll come across these different spirits, who you'll then have to take care of on your boat and also in the meantime get to know them. And this will see you do everything from farming, mining, fishing, harvesting, cooking, to crafting different things that the spirits might ask of you. And although you will often find yourself being lost in the beauty that is this world, this game is ultimately about saying goodbye, with the game giving you just enough time to get to know each and every one of the spirits in excruciating detail before you then say goodbye to them for the final time. As I said, the top 10 is for games that have left a profound impact on me, and I think it's safe to say Spiritfarer most certainly did. And I think how emotional this game made me when I played it is just a testament to how incredible the writing is. Another one of my absolute favorite games is Ooblets. This is truly a game that just keeps on giving. And I know last year I said it was one of my favorites, but this year even more so because they've added even more content. If you somehow have never heard me talk about my love for this game, then let me introduce you to the wonder that is Ooblets. It's basically a cross between a farming sim and Pokemon, but a much more ethical version of Pokemon. Because instead of Pokemon, you have these wonderful creatures called Ooblets, and they don't fight, they dance battle instead. And once you've defeated them in battle, they'll poop out a little seed, which you can then plant in your farm and grow your very own Ooblet. Now, the thing that I love about this is it has a little bit of everything. First off, you have the story and all the characters you meet along the way, which are both equally as wacky as each other. The story sees you travel across the land in a hot air balloon, trying to fix the internet. With each new region you come across containing new Ooblets and new people to dance battle. But the best part to me isn't necessarily the story, it's everything you do in between it. Because unlike Pokemon, you have a house in Ooblets that you can decorate and take care of and upgrade. You also have a plot of land which you can start your very own farm on, which is super useful because not only can you grow and sell different crops to make money, you can also put your little Ooblets to work on your farm when they're not in your team. But you also need different resources in order to challenge wild Ooblets to a dance battle. And not only are the dance battle vibes immaculate, but it's done using this card-based battle mechanic that really shakes things up from other turn-based games. And as I said at the start, the thing that makes this even better is the fact that there are still updates coming to the game even now. We just had an incredible Halloween event, we're waiting on the announcement for a brand new Christmas event coming, and the most recent update was the ability for Ooblets to drive around in cars. To me, this just has a little bit of everything, and even when you finish the story, there's reasons to continue playing because each Ooblet you come across actually comes in 3 different colors, with there being a common variety, an uncommon variety, and also a gleamy, which is the equivalent to a shiny in Ooblets. So to me, this is the perfect blend of everything, and I love it. Next up is my go-to whenever I have 10 minutes spare, 20 minutes spare, or when I'm taking long journeys and just want something to play so I don't get bored, and that is Dorfromantik. This to me has just become my go-to game for so many situations in life that it had to be in my top 10. Despite the fact that it's actually a kind of simple premise, it is endless amounts of fun. This is a building strategy game which sees you place tiles next to one another to create a beautiful, ever-growing landscape. And it will see you build anything from lakes, villages, forests, fields, to even being able to place special tiles down that really change it up. The way it works is each tile is a hexagon, and your goal is to match up as many sides of the hexagon as you can with likewise tiles. So some of them will have bits of villages on them, some of them will have water, others will have forests or fields, and the more edges you join up, the more points you get, with a perfect score going to all 6 of the edges being matched up perfectly. And although you only start off with the single tile at the beginning, it will see you grow a ever-growing landscape. The reason I love it though is you can either play it completely for fun, or you can play it kind of competitively and try and beat your previous high score. And although this seems like such a simple game, it's because of that reason that I'm constantly picking it up. Next is Untitled Goose Game. Now, one of my favorite types of cozy game is definitely a point and click game. And what Untitled Goose Game does is take this genre and really turn it into something unique and unbelievably funny. This is described as being a slapstick stealth sandbox. And you play as a goose who's been let loose on this town. And you have to solve different puzzles in different levels by basically terrorizing the people. Not only is this hilarious, but it will really get you thinking outside of the box, because the puzzles themselves are in no way easy. And to me, what really makes the game great is the NPC's reaction to whenever you mess with them. It's a great way to blow off some steam, relax after a long day, or just cause problems because it's funny. Next is a game that came out a while ago, but I only discovered this year and it made it straight into the top 10, and that is Wylde Flowers. Now, I'll be the first to admit that this is a very, very personal pick, because both the story and the topics covered in Wylde Flowers fall very close to my heart. A lot of people like to describe Wylde Flowers as a farming sim, but I definitely see it as more of a life sim with aspects of farming inside of it. Now, at first, I was a little bit dubious about the game. Mainly because I didn't like the idea of playing a farming or life sim where you didn't get to play as yourself, but it actually turned out to be one of the biggest strengths of the game. In this, you play as Tara, and it's safe to say Tara's not exactly having a great time in life right now. She decided to leave her job in the city after being dumped to come and take care of her ill grandmother and help her with her farm. But it's not long before you start to notice some really odd things happening in the village. And you come to find out that you're actually a witch. And from then on, this game is completely transformed. Instead of it being a bog standard life and farming sim, it becomes a game where you're not only learning how to farm and start a new life in a new town, but you're also learning how to do magic as well. But the real strength in the story of Wylde Flowers is in each and every one of the fully voice acted characters that you speak to. And truly, the voice acting makes a world of difference. In farming sims, I've never typically been really that interested in any of the characters. It was rare that I'd take the time to become friends with any of the NPCs, let alone get into things like dating or marriage. But in Wylde Flowers, I had a hard time picking who I wanted to marry in the game because I fell in love with so many of the characters. Voice acting just brings the characters alive in a way that reading things on the screen just never will. And one thing I really liked about the story was every time there was a big situation or event that happened in the town, you really got to know each of the characters by how they dealt with this news. But like so many of the games on this list, this is also a game that's had a ton of updates since it was launched, with one of my favourite updates being the addition of magical animals which you can breed. Mostly because they just look so freaking cute. Sticking on the emotional theme, next up is Unpacking. On paper, this seems like such a simple game. You're given a pile of boxes and told to unpack them and put the items away however you see fit. However, somehow, with no dialogue and no words at all in the game, it tells a beautiful story about a young woman who grows up. And even to this day, it astounds me about how much detail you can tell about a woman's life just by where you can or cannot place different items. Now, obviously, I don't want to spoil anything about the story, but trust me when I say it's one that I don't think anyone who has played this game has ever forgotten. And you know a game is good when everyone's biggest complaint is that they wish it was longer. Next is another kind of simple game, but I can't stop playing it, and it's Good Pizza, Great Pizza. This is not a particularly deep game, this is just a particularly addicting game, and honestly, I really need more restaurant management style games on the Switch because they're my favourite and there just isn't enough of them. You can probably guess from the title, but Good Pizza, Great Pizza is all about making pizza. But what makes it really cozy is not only are you the one serving pizza, but you're also the one who gets to decorate your entire restaurant as well. The premise is pretty simple. Customers come into your restaurant and they kind of tell you what you want in a kind of cryptic way, and it's your job to try and figure out what kind of pizza they want. After you've served everyone in the restaurant that day, it's then your job to use that money to spend on upgrading different things. This can either be the aesthetics, or you can buy things like more tables to have more customers, more toppings so you can introduce more variety to the restaurant. or even starting to automate some of the processes. To me though, the thing that made me love it is just the core gameplay mechanic. I personally like to play this undocked and use the touchscreen because I find that an awful lot easier. It's just a lot of fun, it's pretty mindless, and I love it to pieces, and I need more games like this. I'm being a bit cheeky with the next one because I'm lumping two games together, but this is the Coffee Talk franchise. I am someone who really wants to sit down and read books at night, but also I can't make myself sit down and read books at night. So this is kind of like a good in-between. Coffee Talk is described as being a talking simulator, and I honestly think that is the perfect way to sum up the experience. This is set in an alternative version of Seattle. Seattle, which is filled with magical and mystical creatures, including aliens, orcs, elves, and more. You play as the owner of a late-night cafe, and although your job is purely just to brew them coffee, it becomes so much more than that, as people come in willing to talk to you about their lives and their problems, opening up to you as you serve them a warm drink. But the thing that makes this game truly exceptional is the way in which the characters interact with not only you, but also one another. Because although the entire game is purely set in this coffee shop, you get to learn about the entire lives of each and every character you come across. But the game doesn't just involve dialogue, it also involves brewing coffee. The only catch to this though is that what you brew them impacts their entire story. This means that you can't switch off for a second. You always need to listen to what they're talking about, what their problems are, in order to make sure that you get the next brew right. And although there's no voice acting, no real cutscenes, nothing like that, just text on a screen, each of the characters are written so well that I instantly felt like I knew them as if they were a real person. Now, although the first Coffee Talk is amazing, it truly isn't until the second Coffee Talk that the game gets exceptional. However, you do need to have played the first one to truly enjoy the second one, which is why I've kind of lumped them together as one. This to me is the perfect game to play before bed, when all the lights are off and you're just lying there, getting sleepy, reading about these wonderful characters. Staying with the pixel art theme, next up is Sea of Stars. Now, I know this is a turn-based RPG, and a lot of you might be thinking, Eeowna, how is this even cozy? There are difficulty levels that I think move this into being a cozy experience. Because a big part of cozy to me is escapism through a fantastic story, and Sea of Stars most definitely has you covered there. This is probably one of the best indie games that has come out in 2023. It is truly that good, and tells the story of two children of the solstice, one with the power of the sun and the other with the power of the moon, who need to combine their powers to try and destroy the monstrous creatures of an evil alchemist known as the Fleshmancer. And to me, Sea of Stars is just perfect in so many ways. First of all, the music is incredible, the game itself is beautiful, I love this style of pixel art, and the story is something that I just could not put down. And I love the fact that your journey changes and morphs as you go and as you meet more people who will help you out in battle. One thing to me that made it really stand out though is the ability to customize your experience. Now, whilst I did personally really enjoy the battle mechanics as they are, as instead of it being your normal turn-based battle mechanics, in this you need to press an action button in sync with the animation to either increase your damage or to take reduced damage when you get attacked. But you don't have to worry if that's also not your thing, as the game introduces these different charms that will do things to customize your experience. So for example, one of the charms will make it so that you no longer have to do the time button presses, and they'll default to perfect every single time. You can also find a charm that will give you double the HP if you've been finding battles a little bit tough. Or if you're someone who finds the overall experience far too easy, you can also make the game an awful lot harder for you. And although a large part of the game is just exploring, there's also these dungeon-like areas that feel very reminiscent of like old school Zelda, where you need to solve little puzzles to try and get through different areas. And of course, you have the very classical feeling boss battles in certain occasions as well. But I also love the fact that it's not just battling. You can sail, you can cook, you can fish, and when you go to stop and rest, you can actually have conversations with each of your party members and see their friendship beyond just the battles. The experience just felt really fine-tuned. I didn't feel like I was grinding at any points. I didn't feel fed up of the battling with no random encounters at all. It just felt really polished, really slick, and I had a fantastic time. The final game on today's list is the Cosmic Wheel of Sisterhood. This has very similar vibes to Coffee Talk, but equally has a lot more weight to each of the decisions you make. This is a narrative experience where you play as Fortuna, a fortune-telling witch who has been exiled on an asteroid for 1,000 years. And the worst part is, she's only 200 years into the sentence. So in absolute desperation, she makes a pact with a forbidden creature called a behemoth, in the hopes of trying to regain her freedom. And it's from here that the game truly starts going. You'll find yourself meeting with your old friends, seeing how they've changed over the 200 years that you've been inside, but you'll also get to meet new witches as well. But the really interesting part of the story is in the tarot cards that you get to make yourself, because as people come to you, you'll also end up reading their cards. And the way in which you decide to interpret the message will determine not only your fate, but also the entire fate of the Cosmic Witch Society in which you are a part of. The thing that makes this game special is you never really know what the impact of what you say is going to be until it happens. Meaning that you don't feel all this pressure whenever you do make a decision in the game, because you honestly don't know which decisions are the big game-changing ones. It's a story that's honestly so good, I struggle to put the game down, and with there being a ton of different endings to it as well, means that you can keep on coming back and trying to see what the game could turn out to be if you made a slightly different decision at one point. And it's almost this weird combination of like a political narrative, but in a witchy world, that has made it something that I just couldn't stop playing. Again, like Coffee Talk, it's a fantastic game to play before bed. It's not incredibly involved, with you mostly going through text and just designing your own tarot cards, that just mean it's a wonderfully chill experience. That's it for my top 10 cozy games of all time. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. And if you want to get excited for some upcoming cozy games, click this video here.